the chilling and incredible life story of Sultan Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. He was the honorable commander of the Islamic world, a ruler who believed God fought by his side, a genius who united the Muslim lands, the man behind one of history's greatest victories, the nightmare of the Crusaders, the conqueror of Jerusalem, Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. Long ago, in Baghdad, there lived a famous carpenter. In the final years of his life, he crafted a masterpiece, a pulpit made from walnut wood, decorated with mother-of-pearl. Everyone who saw it was amazed by its beauty. Word of this pulpit spread quickly, and travelers who came to Baghdad would go to the carpenter and say, "Sell us this pulpit so we can place it in our mosque." But the carpenter always gave the same answer. "No, this pulpit will stand in Al-Aqsa Mosque." People would look at him in disbelief and say, "But Jerusalem is under Crusader occupation." Without hesitation, he would reply, "This is all I can do. I am a craftsman. I carve pulpits. Let a brave man rise, take Jerusalem, and put this pulpit in its rightful place." This story spread far and wide. Everyone talked about the pulpit's beauty. But there was a boy, only 7 or 8 years old, who didn't focus on the beauty. He remembered the carpenter's will. 40 years later, that boy had become a great commander, and the pulpit was finally placed in Al-Aqsa Mosque. That commander's name was Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, the birth of a conqueror. His real name was Yusuf, but history knows him as Salah ad-Din. He was born in Tikrit in 1138. His father, Najm al-Din Ayyub, served under the Seljuk ruler Imad al-Din Zengi. After his father's death, young Salah ad-Din, only 8 years old, was raised under the care of Nuruddin Zengi. Nuruddin Zengi stopped the Second Crusade and captured more than 50 cities from the Crusaders, achievements that even surpassed the Seljuk dynasty. Salah ad-Din inherited much of his morality and sense of justice from him. People even said Nuruddin's justice was unmatched, ranking him right after the great Rashidun caliphs. One day, while Salah ad-Din was delivering the Friday sermon, a young man from the congregation stood up and said, "Oh Salah ad-Din, what are you talking about? Jerusalem is under occupation. Why are we discussing anything else?" Fueled by youthful passion, the young man almost scolded him. Salah ad-Din gave no reply. The prayer ended. The next morning, Salah ad-Din asked his men, "Where is that young man who called for jihad yesterday?" His soldiers replied, "My sultan. He's at home. He didn't come to morning prayer." Salah ad-Din shook his head and said, "And that is why we are not yet marching to liberate Jerusalem." He would wait 7 years before launching his campaign to take the holy city. And when someone once asked him why he never smiled, saying, "A Muslim should smile," Salah ad-Din answered, "How can you smile when Jerusalem is in the hands of the Crusaders?" And indeed, he never smiled until the day he reclaimed it. The First Crusade and the Fall of Jerusalem, 1099. The Middle East was in chaos. The heart of the problem was Jerusalem, because everyone knew that whoever held Jerusalem would hold the power to dominate the world. In 1099, the Crusaders, having established states along the eastern Mediterranean, joined forces and marched toward the city. The Fatimids, unaware that Jerusalem was their true target, failed to take proper defensive measures. After just 8 days of resistance, Jerusalem fell. On Friday, July 15, 1099, the Crusaders stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque courtyard and committed a horrific massacre. Raymond, the commander of the Crusader army, wrote to the Pope, "If you ask what happened to our enemies in Jerusalem, know this: our horses waded in blood up to their knees." Historian Will Durant describes the brutality of the First Crusade like this: Muslim women were slaughtered with spears and swords. Infants were ripped from their mothers' arms and either thrown from the city walls or had their skulls smashed against spears. The ruler who tried hardest to reclaim Jerusalem was without doubt Nuruddin Zengi, but he never got the chance. In 1274, after his sudden death and a period of internal unrest in his realm, Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi stepped in, restored order, and took up his mentor's banner. It was time for Salah ad-Din to become the Crusaders' worst nightmare, the Battle of Montgessard. Salah ad-Din never stopped planning to drive the Crusaders out of the eastern Mediterranean for good. Chroniclers of the time wrote that, no matter what the topic was in any meeting, he somehow brought the conversation back to Jerusalem. The cross raised over the Dome of the Rock, and the screams of Muslim women and children massacred on that Friday of July 15, 1099, haunted his dreams and robbed him of sleep. In 1177, Crusaders massacred Muslims near Ramla. Salah ad-Din left Egypt and marched out to confront them. When he reached Ramla, he split his forces to raid nearby villages and towns for supplies. But the 16-year-old leper King Baldwin IV of Jerusalem was already on his trail. Salah ad-Din's 26,000-strong army was exhausted and scattered when the Crusader forces appeared out of nowhere. With long-lance cavalry and swift maneuvers, the Crusaders split the Muslim army in two and encircled both halves. By nightfall, Salah ad-Din had lost over 20,000 men. One of his own sons was killed in the battle. The devastating defeat sparked rumors in Egypt that Salah ad-Din had been killed. But when he returned with his personal guard, the people of Cairo welcomed him with overwhelming relief and celebration. Uniting the Muslim world, Salah ad-Din launched campaign after campaign, and with each one he strengthened his reputation as the leader of the Muslim world. The Ayyubid state was growing larger and stronger by the day. Since the First Crusade, the greatest weakness of the Muslim forces had been their inability to act together. Salah ad-Din broke that pattern, uniting most of the Islamic world under his leadership. The Ayyubid realm stretched from Egypt to Aleppo, and much of the Red Sea coast was under their control. Most of the population was made up of Kurds and Arabs. The capital, Damascus, was also the hub for all military operations. And yet, despite these achievements, Salah ad-Din could not accept that the Holy Lands were still in Christian hands. Capturing Jerusalem was his ultimate goal. The Battle of Marj Ayun. Years later, Salah ad-Din had rebuilt his armies and developed new strategies to counter the Crusaders. Egypt's fertile lands made the Ayyubid state a strong economic power in a short time. In 1182, Crusaders marching along the coast spotted Salah ad-Din's camp from a high ridge. They decided to seize the advantage with a surprise attack, but the Ayyubid army was prepared for such moves. They quickly formed up for battle and launched a counterattack, winning the day at the Battle of Marj Ayun. Salah ad-Din kept advancing, capturing towns and fortresses from the Crusaders, including the fortress of Asan, where the tomb of Prophet Jacob is located. Unable to withstand the relentless assaults, the king of Jerusalem signed a peace treaty with him. Under its terms, both Muslims and Christians would have their lives and property protected. During the peace, Salah ad-Din campaigned into Armenian lands, capturing several fortresses. Around this time, Nur-ad-Din's son, Ismail Zengi, died of poisoning in his 20s. Salah ad-Din took Aleppo from the Zengids, further strengthening his position. The peace between Muslims and Crusaders lasted about 3 years. But when King Baldwin IV, the leper king of Jerusalem, died, the agreement collapsed. The leper King Baldwin had contracted leprosy at the age of 9. As the only son of the king of Jerusalem and the heir apparent, he received the best education available. He took the throne at 13, but by then, the disease had already been eating away at him for 4 years. When puberty hit, his skin began to break down rapidly. It was said to almost rot away. For the rest of his life, he would be hidden behind masks, wearing long robes and gloves so that no part of his skin could be seen. In those days, leprosy was believed to be a curse from God. His youth and illness put the kingdom in a vulnerable position, and the greatest threat was the man watching for his chance to strike, Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. The siege of Kerak Castle. A few years later, Saladin made his move against the Crusaders. His target, Kerak Castle. Once his plans were in place, he launched the attack. But word of it reached Baldwin far sooner than expected. At that time, Baldwin was 24 years old, and his illness had advanced to a severe stage. His vision was almost gone, and his hands were so crippled that he couldn't even mount a horse. So his commanders had him carried, bed and all, to Kerak Castle. When Saladin learned that reinforcements were on their way from Jerusalem, he lifted the siege and withdrew. But that journey left the young king's already fragile health in ruins. Not long after returning to Jerusalem, Baldwin died at the age of 24 from leprosy. After King Baldwin IV's death, his 9-year-old nephew, Baldwin V, took the throne. For Saladin, this was an opportunity. He would bide his time, make his plans, and within 3 years, Jerusalem would be his. The young king broke the peace treaty with the Muslims, allowing Muslim caravans and villages to be attacked and burned. Crusaders ambushed a caravan of Muslim pilgrims returning from the Hajj, massacring them. The Prince of Kerak looted the caravan, had the Muslims beheaded, and mocked them, saying, "Where is your Muhammad now? Call him. Let's see if he comes to help you." That insult destroyed whatever was left of the fragile peace between Muslims and Christians. For Saladin, it was the final straw. He swore he would kill the Prince of Kerak with his own hands. Saladin sent word across the Islamic world. He was preparing to retake Jerusalem. From Egypt, Syria, the Abbasid Caliphate, the Turks, and every corner of the Muslim lands, thousands of volunteers set out to join his army. When the Crusaders heard the news, their first thought was to defend Jerusalem itself. But the young king wanted to prove himself. Instead of defending the city, he chose to march his army out to face Saladin head-on. Saladin had two key allies at his side. One was his son, al-Afdal, whom he had placed in charge of Damascus. The other was his most trusted general, Gukbari. Saladin first sent Gukbari to scout the Tiberias frontier and survey all the wells in the area. Months later, Saladin struck, capturing the fortress of Tiberias in just a single day. This threw the Crusader strategy into chaos. Unsure of their next move, they decided to attack the Ayyubids. But now, Saladin's plan was in motion. He had set the rules of the game and would force the enemy to fight on his terms. He drew the Crusaders into a wide plain near Tiberias, right where he wanted them, and waited in front of the village of Hattin. The wells he had scouted months earlier, he'd ordered them filled with sand and gravel. By the time the Crusaders reached them, there was nothing left, and no way to turn back. The burning heat, heavy armor, and crushing thirst began to sap the Crusaders' strength. That night, they tried to camp in silence, but the quiet was shattered by a whistling arrow slicing through the dark. There was no going back now. At dawn, the battle began. Saladin positioned his forces with the Sea of Galilee and the Jordan River behind him. If the Crusaders wanted water, they would have to break through the Ayyubid army. By some accounts, the Crusader army numbered between 50,000 and 63,000 men. After a night without water, they charged hard at sunrise, but the Muslim forces repelled them. By the second day, thirst was unbearable. The Crusaders attacked again, but once more, they were driven back. The final Crusader defeat and the fall of Jerusalem. In the end, the Crusader army, exhausted and worn down, faced Saladin's order for a full-scale assault. The Muslim forces closed in, surrounding them in a deadly circle, and struck with a crushing blow. Over 30,000 Crusaders were killed, and roughly the same number were taken prisoner. Among those captured was the king of Jerusalem, along with the notorious Count of Kerak, known for insulting our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. In Islam, offering water to a prisoner is considered an act of pardon. Saladin handed the king a cup of water, but when the king passed that water to the count, Saladin drew his sword. The time had come to fulfill his oath. With a single, decisive strike, he beheaded the man who had dared to insult the prophet. The remaining prisoners were brought before Saladin in chains. He ordered that all the knights be executed, and the rest be sent in chains to Damascus. After the victory, Saladin visited the tomb of Prophet Shu'aib at Hattin and offered prayers. Within 3 months of the Battle of Hattin, the cities of Acre, Nablus, Jaffa, Tyre, Beirut, and Ascalon all fell into Ayyubid hands. The Crusaders no longer had the strength to defend Jerusalem. As news spread that Saladin was marching toward the Holy City, Muslims from every corner rushed to join his army. When Saladin's forces finally arrived before Jerusalem, the siege began. All eyes were fixed on the crosses atop the city walls. The massive cross on the dome of the rock only fueled the determination of the Muslim soldiers. Catapults began pounding the walls. When news came that the northeastern walls had weakened, Saladin redirected all his catapults to that sector. After heavy bombardment, the walls crumbled. The Crusaders launched a desperate breakout attempt, but the Muslims quickly surrounded and crushed them. According to the historian Ibn Kathir, the Crusaders eventually had no choice but to surrender and plead for Saladin's protection. At first, the Sultan refused. "Just as you took this city by force, so will I. And just as you slaughtered the Muslims in Jerusalem before, I will not leave a single Christian alive here." The Crusaders, in desperation, threatened him. "If you give us no mercy, we will kill every Muslim prisoner we hold." At the time, around 4,000 Muslims were in Crusader captivity inside Jerusalem. They even went as far as saying, "We'll start with our women and children." The surrender of Jerusalem. Desperation set in. The Crusaders told Saladin, "We're destroying our homes and our beautiful places. We're burning our belongings. We're destroying everything we own. We're tearing down the dome. We're setting fire to everything we can, and then we'll come out and fight you to the death. There's no good left in our lives now. None of us will die without taking a few of you with us. What hope could we possibly have left?" Hearing this, Saladin, who had first refused, agreed to peace, but under strict conditions: 10 dinars from each man, 5 from each woman, and 2 from each child. Those unable to pay would become slaves. Crops, goods, weapons, and houses would be left to the Muslims. The Crusaders would be allowed safe passage to the city of Tyre. Anyone who could not pay within 40 days would be taken as a prisoner. Under these terms, a total of 16,000 men, women, and children were taken captive. On a Friday, before the noon prayer, the Muslim army entered Jerusalem. Their first act was to remove the crosses, priests, and pigs from Al-Aqsa Mosque, cleansing it. The rooms and storerooms built by the Templars west of the Great Mihrab were restored to their original state. The dome of the rock was washed with pure water, then sprinkled with rosewater and musk. The great cross atop the dome was taken down, replaced with the crescent. The magnificent pulpit commissioned by Sultan Nur ad-Din Zengi for Jerusalem was placed beside the mihrab. Carpets were laid, lamps were hung, prayer mats spread. Prayers were offered, the call to prayer echoed through the city, and supplications rose to the heavens. The death of Saladin, the conqueror of Jerusalem, became one of the most celebrated heroes of the Islamic world. The madrasas he built in Egypt drew scholars and students from across the globe. The knowledge produced there cleansed Egypt of Shia influence and turned it into a hub of learning. Historian Ibn Shaddad wrote of Saladin's vast historical knowledge, his wide culture, and his steadfastness in keeping promises, no matter the cost. He loved to forgive. The year was 1193. The great commander who had spent his life defending Islam against the Crusaders lay on his deathbed. He gave a final request. "Bring me a long staff." Those at his bedside didn't understand, but they brought it. Saladin, struggling to lift his hand from beneath the woolen blanket, pointed toward a cupboard. "My shroud is there. Take it out and place it on the end of the staff." When the shroud was fastened to the staff, Saladin said, "Now take this through the streets of Damascus. Let everyone hear. Your Sultan, Saladin, leaves behind all his treasures and riches. The only thing he takes from this world is this 2-yard shroud." On March 4th, 1193, the great Sultan passed away in Damascus. Poems were recited, prayers offered. The people remembered him not only as a hero but as a leader who showed the fleeting nature of this world. May God make us among those who never see anything in this world as eternal, but focus instead on the hereafter. Amen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.